You pay attention to the finest details, you find that need gap, और उसके बाद you act on it.
Correct.
Because life misses you by if you're living unconsciously.
How can one aim to become a mindful parent?
Just being in that very moment,
Doing that one thing.
doing that one thing, giving it your all is mindfulness.
How and when actually do you start talking to your children about money?
Income minus savings is expenses, not income minus expenses equal to savings. If you're thinking that sending my child abroad is a sure shot ticket to a high paying job,
That's
correction,
not true.
correction. What you've learned and what you really are passionate about will find you.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Happy Hour with Fin Cocktail. Today we have with us the founder of Kids Top Press. She is also the author of an amazing book called The Parents I Met. And to top it all, she is also a certified conscious parenting coach. Welcome to our show, Mansi.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So glad you could make it.
Yes, very excited. Looking forward.
Absolutely. Amazing. So tell us, from a career in marketing for FMCG and retail to starting your own platform to becoming an author, how has your journey been and what is it that led you here?
It might seem as a very planned move, but it's actually quite an organic journey. And I think for everybody, who kind of is looking at entrepreneurship, or for someone who's looking at it at a macro perspective, the two things that really stood out for who I am today and where I am is one, the curiosity to learn and constantly be on this path of learning and understand why people do what they do. And interestingly, I was at a wedding yesterday and this 75-year-old aunt sat me down and she's like, I want to know, everything that you're doing. It's so interesting and all of that. And she's like, what you're doing, ऐसा नहीं कि और किसी ने इसके बारे में नहीं सोचा है. But the very fact that आप उस चीज़ को observe करते हैं, you pay attention to the finest details, you find that need gap, और उसके बाद you do some action on it, like you act on it, because life misses you by if you're living unconsciously, right? And I think each one of us who are doing something that we're truly passionate about, it's not that we've found something out of the world, we've just stopped, paused and acted, right? So that was one, which is to be extremely watch people and learn from them, and the other is just this fascination for the human brain. Right? Like whether it was working for skincare while I was back at O&M, or it was, and skincare across. So like when you're working with Unilever, I've done like over 25,000 consumer hours where we are sitting down with a lady down in the villages of UP, Bihar, to South India, to North India, to West, to East, and understanding what they are going through every single day, what their struggles are, what pain points they have, to now understanding what moms are doing, to back in the day understanding luxury retail. I was in like premium and luxury retail before I started Kids Top Press, but just to understand consumer behavior and why we respond the way we do is something that always fascinated me. If I wouldn't have done marketing, I would have probably just studied psychology or consumer behavior. And I still want to continue. Maybe that's why last year I certified to be a conscious parenting coach, because the human brain really fascinates me.
Wow. Very interesting. So, since you mentioned that, you did your conscious parenting certification, in today's day and age, so many people, like myself, want to be very mindful about parenting. It's not the same as how it used to be when we were raised. What are your thoughts on that, and how can one aim to become a mindful parent?
So I, just strangely yesterday, I was recording with Devdutt Patnaik. He's a mythologist and a really accomplished one. And which I've written in my book as well, The Parents I Met, that parenting, just like the Bhagavad Gita, is timeless. we're just faced with different challenges at different points in time. Like when we were growing up, I mean, you're a different generation, but when I was growing up, we were playing like or we were playing, we had the cable TV as a distraction versus a Netflix today. So the distractions that whether Arjun faces, you face, or I face, continue to keep changing and evolving. But the methods, the bandwidth, and the mental resilience to deal with it is very similar, right? And that is timeless. So yes, people are more mindful today, but we have to understand that our parents came out of lack of information. We are far more informed today, so we are conscious about, okay, what decisions I want to make for my child, whether it is about finance, whether it's about education, whether it's about food, or whether it's about play, or travel or experiences that our children are going through. So it came from lack of information, but yes, today we are more informed, but there is paradox of choice,
Right.
which makes it even more confusing.
Harder.
And it's strange that while our kids are going through a mental health crisis, we're going through one ourselves as well, because we're dealing with overwhelm of excess, and they're dealing with overwhelm or anxiety of comparison, right? So yes, parents today need to be more mindful because they're well informed, and because children are just as well informed. I mean, we got onto the internet, I think age of 21, 22 is when I probably, or 18, 19, I don't remember. But our kids have got onto the internet at the age of 2 and 3, and sometimes even at 6 months. They probably haven't said mama yet, but they're swiping left and right.
Yeah.
So if you are talking to such an informed generation, you've got to be smarter and you've got to be more mindful.
The other part of my question was, how do you get there?
Is to just increase your respond time
Okay.
and reduce your react time. So that is one. But it's a very, very long process. And I think it's baby steps to being aware, being present. Like how many times, and we share very, very simple things on our Instagram channel of how you can be more mindful every single day, right? I know parents walking into the door, either on a call or just scrolling through, and people have, and the kids have said hi, and nobody's even
Nobody's
made that eye
responding.
contact, right? So I tell parents, just if you need to take that 15 minutes, finish that call, respond to that post, respond to that comment, no problem. Don't ring the bell for 15 minutes. Do it in the parking lot, do it in the lobby of your building. But when you come up, when you ring that bell, be ready to be greeted with all the love, all the passion, all the, warmth that you are going to see your child with, right? Simple things like we don't even see people who we're standing with next to in the elevator, right? Like such a simple thing. I've told my kids, you cannot be on the phone when, like I grew up in South Bombay, and, like till date, when I go back to my mom's house, we'll say hi to from the dudhwala to the neighbors, to one other auntie on the 3rd floor and the 7th floor and their kids and whatever,
Yeah.
because that's human connection. That's how what makes us different. What makes us different is our ability to connect and storytell, right? And we're just losing that. And I think your children are watching you. So the more mindful you are, and mindfulness is not only with yourself, it's with every single being around you, right? It could be the person in the lift, it could be the person, it could be the taxi wala, it could just be an object, right? It's so simple, but a living being. So mindfulness comes with every single, if you're trying to multitask 100 things at a time, you're not going to be mindful. And I think and monotasking, something which I practice, is a whole separate conversation and a topic. But just being in that very moment,
Doing that one thing.
giving it your all, is mindfulness.
Absolutely. So it brings me to my next question. When you decide to be a parent or have kids, it's a very big decision.
Very.
Okay. Not just emotionally, mentally, but also financially. In today's day and age, it is expensive
Very
to
expensive.
raise a child. So what are the factors, the financial factors that one must consider before jumping into this kind of a decision?
So let's break this down into two parts. Okay. One part comes from if you want to do it now, or if you want to do it for later. Okay. So assume you are this age of 26, 27, which is typically the conception age currently in India. At least in a large part of metro and tier 2 cities, barring maybe a mega city like Bombay, which is a
Later,
different
much later. Yeah.
species altogether, right? But if you're looking at an ideal age of about 26, 27, option one, I want to do it here and now. Okay. Now, in that case, what's very important is that you need to factor in that what kind of childbirthing options are you looking at? If you're looking at a C-sec, it's going to cost you somewhere around 1.5 to 2 lakhs versus a normal delivery is going to cost you anywhere between
40,
50 to
50.
80,000. What kind of birthing places are you looking at? Do you want a Rosette, or do you want a British Candy Hospital, or do you want something else? What kind of maternity insurance does your company or your firm offer, or have you secured for yourself? What kind of financial planning have you done, whether you're going to go back to work or you're not going to go back to work? Depends on the support system that you have. If you don't have a support system, if you're living in a nuclear family, which is only my husband and I, and okay, we will need to keep like a nanny. And we need to keep a japa maid who costs like 50,000 rupees is what I'm told as of latest in per month, right? And if you're going to do that, then oh my god, right? So absolutely okay if that's what you want, no judgment, but you've got to factor that cost in. Then other factors that you must consider is, the kind of vaccination cost that you're looking at. Typically in the first 18 months of childbirth, you will look at vaccinations anywhere between 80 to 1.5 lakhs for just
Usually,
vaccination.
typically, I know that every visit is about 10 to 15,000 bucks.
Right, so you're looking at that includes vaccination. A doctor's fee typically today would cost you about 2,500. Vaccination cost comes in that 80 to 1.5. Then what kind of other care that you're looking at, right? Like, do you want the larger expenses, which are probably one-time expense, but how much of that do you want? Which are high ticket values like pram, car chairs, stroller, this, that, whatever, right? Cot. In the good old days, we used to reuse, right? If you're in a Gujarati family like mine, then oh my god, the jhula that I grew up with is still being circulated, right? Why don't you, if you are okay to look at a pre-loved economy, then your cost can be substantially different. If you're a minimalist like me and say, listen, I just need bare essentials, I will invest in only one car seat and one bed guard. I'm not even looking at a cot. Bombay Homes, no space. And I want a high chair which is foldable where I can put it off or carry it with me wherever I go. That's all I need for my child. Then you're talking of a different person altogether. Then looking at, so that would be typically your expense, and assume that you want an extended maternity break, and which is not 6 months, and you want to say a year. So will your company afford to give you that? And what is your company's childcare plan to have you back? And what are the options and benefits that they are going to offer? Assume you want to quit. Do you have that financial planning of, okay, if I am going to leave after maternity break, how much, like at least 1 year of financial expenses, what you should have as savings, which is invested in short term. So that is one part of it. Assume you don't want to have a child later and say, I'm at the peak of my career. Dude, now I'm going to look at it 5 years later. What is going to be my childbearing cost? Let's plan for IVF because it is really expensive. Let's plan for multiple
Freezing your
cycles.
eggs, maybe.
Freezing your eggs, multiple cycles of IVF, adoption. What are your other options? And then, of course, all of that I spoke in option one. So all of that compounded is what you will need to factor in what you want to do, right? And that is only the first 1,000 days of a child's life. That's the first 1,000 days. It's not gone anywhere else. Then, of course, if you're looking at travel, right? Like, please travel as much as you want till the child hits a ticket number, and then you don't want to pay for it. And you want to also commit to a factor and a number where all constants remain the same, which is your current lifestyle. So it's important that you plan it like that. And of course, we're not yet talking of education and all of that, which will follow. But that's the first, and assume this 0 to 2, first 1,000 days of life, we're not talking of education yet. If you are that mom who wants, okay, my child should also go to music class, should also go to a baby
Parent
toddler
toddler.
and mother toddler and all of that, then that's a separate cost. So I feel there's no one answer that sort of defines how much, because parents are so different. What your need is, which city you belong, is just so different.
Absolutely. Since we're talking all this money talk, how and when actually do you start talking to your children about money? Try to get them to be a little financially literate. I mean, I know that my mom had this conversation with me when I was in my teens, say 14, 15, and then that's when she started talking to me about like investing, and then
Yeah.
there's something called mutual funds, and then we
Your
put.
mom was such a cool person.
She was a really cool mom. She still is. She probably knows more about investments just as much as me even now. So she spoke to me about all that at that age. Um Today I feel like we need to talk to our kids about saving. Investing and all comes a little bit later, but at least about saving at a much younger age. So what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. I really wish somebody had handed over the psychology of money to me when I was a teenager or probably 10. I think it's one of the best books that I've
Yeah,
read.
it is.
And I think it should be part of every child's school library and every child's collection of books because I think what that book has taught me is invaluable. It has really shaped me as a person, and wish really like how Yuval's Sapien is dumbed down to be not dumbed down but like toned down or made it more accessible to children like
Yeah.
with Unstoppable. I wish Morgan Housel could do that for kids as well. But we have Zerodha's Varsity, or we
Yeah.
have Safal Niveshak who actually does. I mean, I'm a huge Vishal fan. So if you've done, like, I've sent my kids for his program and he has children's workshop, by the way, which everybody should send their kids. I mean, they're typically 8 or 9 when they do that, but it's absolutely brilliant program. Or just YouTubing their way through. But I think the genesis of when you need to start talking about money does not come in, okay, one fine day, let's talk about money. That's not how it really happens, right? Especially where we are raising a generation that's growing on a digital currency. Right? At least जब हम हमारे माँ बाप के साथ दुकान में जाते थे, that
Physical
removing
cash,
of that money, oh my
coins,
God,
cash, whatever.
it's still painful, right? And that's why we felt the pain, because something was going out of our pocket. We were handing it over. That tactile feel was so important to value it. So to answer your question, when do you start? Honestly, I can't pinpoint an age where I would have started, but I've discussed things with my kids, or price tags with my kids, or why do we need what we want very, very early on, right? And it starts from who you are, right? Like I said, I didn't want like a permanent high chair in my house, and I didn't need an extra something made in wood and made in Germany in my house to show anybody else. If I needed it, if my child really needed it, I would have bought it, but otherwise, no. So there is a very clear conversation that we had with our kids on need, want, very, very early on, right? And desire, right? That was a very clear conversation there. And right from the age of 2 or 3, do we really need it? Do we want it? Or do we are like so desirable about it? Children are born with such a strong intuition, and trust me, when you started that young, those tantrums will never lead to a meltdown. You will not face that situation of children rolling on the floor, because they understand whether we need it. Can we, and also providing options. If we don't really need it, can we make do with this? Because you're providing them, and then they are in the position of empowerment to choose. Okay, my God, I'm in the driver's seat. What am I going to choose?
Yeah.
Right? So money conversations are had in so many different ways. Right? It's not going to be just a no. We cannot buy this because it's too expensive. That's a very Indian way of saying no. But no is never backed by a reason. But today's kids, you can't say no.
No.
Because if it's no, then it'll be why. And then it'll be you don't understand. Right? And you are not living in my shoes. You don't know what's happening at school. You don't know how I feel. And then everything goes from that you don't know how I feel will lead to a whole separate saga altogether. So it's very important that, right, there is no perfect age. You start as young as 2. It's never coming from, and I'd love to share this, it's never coming from how a lot of Indian kids have been raised, right? हम ये afford नहीं कर पाते हैं. Because जब हम ये बोलते हैं कि ये हमारे बस में नहीं है, it becomes more desirable. It becomes inaccessible. और जब वो होता है, then you always fear that thing. Your relationship is very strained with that subject. Right? Like, think about your childhood crush. You always said, your friend said, dude, you're never going to get him. Right? You did either extreme to get it, or you always thought, I'm not good enough. That's how your parents can actually influence your equation with money. Sure, you like that? Of course, let's work towards a plan of how we can get there. Like my daughter has given up 2 birthday parties. I think her 8th birthday and 9th birthday, because her dream is, I want to go to Paris. Okay. I said, okay, we've got to work towards it. How are we going to put the plan into place? So are you, what can we pull in? I'm going to pull in my birthday money, said Mama. She said, okay, Mama, I'm going to pull in my birthday money. Let's not have a party. Boom, we've got tickets to Paris.
Wow.
Right? And it's a very, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to talk. I hate to talk about it, but I went for the Taylor Swift concert recently to Singapore, and the day we booked it, we said we can't afford the Ed Sheeran concert. Let's put it on sale. She's like, yeah, Mom, we'll at least be able to get our one-way ticket to Singapore.
Yeah.
But even with that, and it sounds like, oh my God, you're part of that top 1 percentile who can go for a concert to Singapore. But with that also, if your child can value that, okay, let me at least get my ticket recovered by selling something I have.
Else, yeah.
To me, that's a win.
It
to
is.
feel like, oh my God, I've done something. And these are transactional experiences that have happened just in spur of moments, right? So I think there's never that right time or right age. It just starts.
Yeah. That's a great way of putting it. So, you mentioned something about your daughter, or somebody saying, a child saying, you don't know how I feel. You don't know what happens in school. So, when they say these things, you realize that there is so much peer pressure that kids undergo on a daily basis, which sometimes you know about, sometimes you don't know about, sometimes you can do something about it, sometimes you feel helpless. What is, in your opinion, how can I or anybody as a parent deal with peer pressure? Kids want, for example, your child wants to buy an expensive thing because their classmate has it or their friend has it. But that's no reason for your child to have it as well.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that kind of peer pressure as a parent?
It's a very interesting question, and also quite a one that I'm sure our parents were quizzed on as well. But there's always been peer pressure. We now think that there is a lot of peer pressure. But I remember I was in grade 1. And there was this, at that time, there was this pencil box with like water in it, and the fishes would go.
Yeah.
Oh my God, like I was so obsessed with it, and you would get it only at like Amarsan's. And I'd tell my mom, I really want it. And she's like, of course we can get it, but what are you ready to do for it? Or why should we get it? You really need it right now, right? And so at every age, in every generation, there has been a time where something is more desirable what somebody else has. But I think what is very important and interesting is that when we were growing up, and the way I've been raised, is that happiness never came from money, right? Like happiness is not something that money could buy, unfortunately, because our parents had more time to give. And I keep saying this on my LinkedIn as well, that the guiltiest parents are found on LinkedIn and at airport at Hamley stores. Because you're always overcompensating for what you don't have, right? And exactly to that you are overcompensating because you maybe don't have the time. And peer pressure is something that you'll always feel. We all feel it. But I think what I explain to my children is, again, the difference between who you're judged for being, right? Like people are not going to value you for what you have, but what you have within you, right? Like external appearances, clothes. And I think, I don't know if I'm giving very tangible answers for people to take away, but it's very important from where you're coming from. If, like I know this child who keeps saying, oh, my mom bought a Gucci bag, because the mom says, oh, I'm keeping my Gucci bag here. Now, you have made that brand such a big deal in your child's life that the child is saying that, right? And also, pressure hits you when you come. Let's understand, where does pressure come from? Pressure comes when you feel out of control, when your ability to not respond to something. When do you feel out of control? When you're not empowered with information. When are you not empowered with information? When there's no conversation. Why is there no conversation? Because there's lack of time or the ability to explain, or being in conscious spaces together, right? A simple example, like my daughter we came back from, I think, spring break or something, and we'd gone to Jaisalmer and Jodhpur, and somebody had come back from Dubai, and I think this was a couple, maybe like 10 years ago, and everybody has to say in class, Acha, where did you go? Where did you go? And my daughter said, Miss, I went to Jodhpur and we sat on the camels. And the other girl said, oh, I went to Dubai and I sat on the camels. So my daughter was like, yeah. So she's like, oh, but you take a passport to go to Dubai and it's an international trip and it's more expensive. And my daughter's like, yeah, but camels are the same everywhere, right? And in India, in Jodhpur, actually, you have two humped camels versus in Dubai. Did you sit on that? So my point was, I'm not going to be there always to be there to bat for her, right?
Yeah.
She's now coming, if we track that back, information, feeling in control, therefore ability to handle pressure, and therefore comfortable in who she is. So there is always going to be that pressure. So it is about how you equip your children to deal with that pressure with information and being very confident of who you are. And that will only come from knowledge and not from what you wear, do, how you travel, or which club memberships you have, or how many followers you have on social, or any sort of currency.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Tell us about a few common parenting mistakes that people make, which sort of impacts the child's outlook on money.
I think we spoke about this. One is that you're either overindulging because you're overcompensating. The other would be that, as our parents, the way our parents did it, right? Which is, we were never taught. And I think, again, this is something I learned from both Vishal Khandelwal and my dad, which was income minus savings is expenses, not income minus expenses equal to savings, right? I think that was one. The second was that your is about debt. Debt comes at a cost. What is your risk appetite at that point in time? Are you going to be able to take that risk? And there is a price that debt comes with. Will you be able to pay it? And the third was, I think, which my dad taught me, was compounding, the power of compounding. I think if parents kind of teach this, there are no other sort of, there are no mistakes. Mistakes we can make many, but if we teach our kids these three things, they will be so sorted that no matter which mistakes they make, they will kind of come back to being at equilibrium again.
Right.
So I think, and very strongly, what are your non-negotiables as a family, right? So we were so very core, and again, I see this so much of reflection between my dad and how Nakul and me are raising our girls, is non-negotiables and negotiables. Non-negotiables were no compromise on education, no compromise on books, no compromise on travel, no compromise on experiences, okay? And food and healthcare, right? Those were our non-negotiables. My father would never cringe at providing the best education there is, right? But of course, if we said, oh, I want this bag and my school bag is broken, or I want a new compass box and all that, wait it out, dude. Just wait it out.
Yeah.
Okay? So you were very clear that har cheez ke liye na nahi hoti hai.
Correct.
And even today, right, if my kids have to travel somewhere or whatever, and they'll be like, oh, but our friends are going business or whatever. I'm like, fine, that's fine. I travel economy. You can travel with me. And that's fine. And I think sometimes that conversation of, oh, they are going business is not even a thought in their head, because they know, oh my God, can I travel to 2 destinations in that
the cost
money
of one ticket.
instead of one? Because they're so in love with travel experiences, meeting new people, that they are always going to calculate like that. Right? And the other is, even with my husband and me, we are like all for experiences, all for education, all for books. Like, they know that, books can buy you credits, education can buy you credits, and those credits that we actually have fictional can be redeemed against anything that you want. So in that process also, they're learning budgeting. They're learning like, oh my God, I have so many credits. I'm going to do this. This is how I can spend those credits.
Yeah.
So I think those 2 or 3 things that we kind of do to make sure that they know that this is what you will get, this is, and also it just really helps strengthen your equation with money. Like it's not desirable and it's not equal to happiness.
Yeah.
Like everything, there are lots of other things besides money that can make you happy, because then you'll also have the ability to give if you have such an equation with money, which I think um, a lot of parents forget to teach their children.
Right. Absolutely. So studying abroad has become so expensive. Obviously, it differs from country to country, university to university, but it's also something that um, a lot of kids studying, especially in international schools, think is the natural sort of course of action. What are your thoughts on that, and how can parents cope or sort of explain to them what the right thing to do is, keeping the financial angle in mind?
So I think the financial angle has to be the epicenter of it. Cannot be a peripheral thought because it's expensive, right? It's really expensive. Let's look at some of the top colleges that we're talking of, right? So we're talking of Indian colleges being anywhere between 20 to 30 lakhs per annum versus a US college anywhere between 1 crore to 1.2, assuming bacha jayega, aap jaoge, and all of that, right? Setting up home and all of that. That's cost per year. Okay. Now, what is important to make choices and decisions is one, can you afford it? Right? What are the options to get there? And I keep telling my daughter that, listen, no problem, you want to go there. What are the scholarship options? Let's find that. That's got to be. And today, institutions and today, so many organizations have those options, right? So figure out your aid. Like, can you get, which are the universities that are offering aid? Which are the programs in the universities that you desire, that you actually want to apply? Like, I know kids who've applied for university applications this year, and when they're expecting their early decisions, they're like, okay, you know what, I will take this, but if this college who is slightly lower gives me 100% or a full ride, I'll take that. So I think as far as parents are having those sort of conversations with their children, it's absolutely okay. Number 3 is, what are you going there for? Is there a differentiated program? Or are you paying for your child to live independently away from you and to get life skills? It's a very important fact to know, because a lot of parents think, boss, up to, when you send your kids abroad, unko sab pata chal jata hai. Living alone teaches you life. Of course, living alone teaches you life skills. But your child should know those life skills. And yes, those are differentiated, but at what cost? Because if you have the money, listen, if you have the money, this conversation is
It's
not happening.
pointless, right?
Right? But this conversation is important for parents who are going to stretch themselves. Parents who have 2 kids, right? Like me, I am going to make a very conscious call that, listen, if you want to go for a differentiated program, how do you get there? Why is you? And today we're so lucky that we're not only talking about US, we're talking about US, Canada, Singapore, Middle East, Far East, we're talking of Australia opening up as an option. We're talking of so many different countries. We're talking of India, which has so many amazing undergrad colleges, right? So we are living in a space of already a great space. Today, again, YouTube, I think it's the biggest teacher ever. Like, it's just opened up doors. Like, I was watching this video of this one guy who's just learned English sitting in some village and now has become an English tutor. And it's phenomenal, right? So also, do you want to take a complete undergrad course? Do you want to take a specialized course? Do you want to take a summer course? Do you want to take an add-on course? Do you want to do only masters? After masters, do you want to take a specialized course? Education is so democratized today that if you're thinking that sending my child abroad is a sure shot ticket to a high paying job,
That's
correction,
not true.
correction. Right? Because today you're not competing only with children who are going to international schools. I know parents who've moved to an Ahmedabad or a Lucknow or a Jaipur. And in good old CA days, people used to apply from different cities and actually move there a year and a half before. कि उधर का कोटा थोड़ा ज़्यादा होता था. Bombay में there are too many people applying. So, let me apply from another city and my chances of passing would be much higher. Like, people have done that. Today, parents are doing that for IB school or applying to Ivy League schools or applying that to the US. I know somebody who's moved to Ahmedabad purely because she feels like universities are going to look at this as, oh my God, I've already taken 3 kids from Bombay. I don't want more kids from Bombay. I'll take from a tier 2 town. So everything, and I keep saying this both on my personal feed and on Kids Stop Breast, everything in life is a choice. They are options. Is it going to be a stretch? Communicate that back with your kids. Like I said, I'm very clear. My daughter has been told, you want to go this is how much we can afford. The rest of it is on you. Figure out your grades, figure out your extracurriculars, figure out what it takes to get there. Because if you're not going to do this brick by brick by brick foundation, then one fine day she's going to say, listen, 50% of my class is going abroad and you're the only parent who's not sending me. And she needs to know that, okay, what's the backup? Right? Like advertising, when I was at O&M, we were always taught, what's the backup? What's the backup to the backup? You always have to have plan B, plan A doesn't work. So you are preparing your child before the eventuality of an unexpected result to know that, okay, you have this is also an option. But if you want, like pure dil se, if you want plan A, just go for it. And I'm with you.
Yeah.
The result is in your favor or not, I'm unconditionally there for you.
Absolutely. So it's okay to be vulnerable with your child about the affordability bit.
Oh, 100%. Such a simple thing, right? Like when you ask me, when you start talking to your kids about money and to be talking about vulnerability, every time we go out for a meal, I ask the kids very like innocently, why don't you check the bill if we've got everything? So they think they're like in charge, right? They'll check, oh yeah, we had grilled cheese, we had this, we had this. And then obviously she's seeing what the total amount is. She's like, Mom, this is expensive. And I'm like, yeah. She's like, next time, no, next time we go to some other. So my point is, so far as that thought process is there, like sometimes I know this is really funny, but my elder one came up to us a couple of days ago and she said, Mom, are we poor? I said, I think so. Like, what do you think? And she said, I don't understand. Like, I see you and Dad being so cool on the internet. I'm like, where's the money? And I'm like, I'm also trying to think, where's the money? So, unfortunately, it's never about how much we have,
Yeah.
but it's about what their perception of money is, right? And
Yeah.
it's so funny. Like, I really am not the one to laugh at her questions, but the way she came up to me and
Where's
she
the
said,
money?
where's the money? And she just asked me, are we poor? I really didn't know what to answer because I'm like, what should
Maybe.
I say? Like, will the scholarship dream go down a little if I say no, I have the money? I'm sure she's not listening to this podcast, but no, but it's funny, but extremely vulnerable with the children, and they know every single bit of, right from the car that we buy. They've come on all test drives. घर के पर्दे कितने रुपए के हैं, घर का फर्नीचर कितना रुपए का है, every little detail. Like, I am so, I wouldn't say chindi, but mindful,
Mindful.
right? So I will be like, oh my God, Anya, look at the edamame price. She's like, you're going to, I don't know whose reel I saw the other day, and they were like eating something, and she's like, इससे better और घर पे तो सस्ते में मैं बना सकती हूँ. And she's like, Mom, please don't look at the edamame price and say that we can buy this and then make this at home. I was like, no, I'm not going to say that. But the very fact
that she's thinking about it,
Thinking
and
about it.
connecting, making that connection.
and very simple things, like I always keep telling my children, just because we can't afford it doesn't mean we get it. Like a simple thing, and that's when you start respecting an ecosystem around you. A simple thing like mangoes, right? In traditional Gujarati household, you will not get it till Holi is
Holi
done,
is done,
and
yeah. My mom still does
Yeah,
that, yeah.
we don't get it. Even if it's out in the market, we'll not get it because you're respecting the seasonality
Yeah.
of nature. You're respecting that, okay, we will first serve it to Lord and then we will have it, right? Like, so the concept is ingrained there. You have not taught about budgeting, value, money,
They
nothing.
see you kind of do it, and then
But what you are subconsciously teaching them is, just because you can afford that 2,000 rupees a dozen right now doesn't mean you get
should.
it. Because again, it comes back to, money cannot buy you happiness. It cannot buy you the sweetest fruit, right? It cannot, because समय से पहले और समय के बाद nothing will happen. So you've got to wait for your time. And I think such simple things, like, we just forget to teach them. And then, even if somebody will say that, you want a mango, and she's like, no, auntie, I'm good, I'll have it later. So it's just that intuition. And there also comes the ability to give from what you have,
Hmm.
right? The ability to share from whatever little you may have, but the ability to share. So it all comes from just watching and being vulnerable and sharing. That listen, this is like such a simple thing. Yesterday was a traffic signal, and after recording some 5 podcasts, I was eating lunch at 4:30, and I picked up my daughter from school, and then I had this dabba and I had 3 theplas in it. And one lady came knocking, and I gave her one. She's like, "Mom, you haven't eaten lunch the whole day," and I said, "That's fine, but you give with what you have."
Hmm.
Right? It was such a simple thing. And I don't think that there was too much conversation there, but there was just silent observation.
Hmm.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Everything is not spoken.
Yeah. So, as a parent to a 15-month-old son, I have this question personally. How do you deal with phone screens and television screens and social media when it comes to your baby?
It's a great tool, but it's a double-edged sword. So it depends on how you use it. Also, again, yes, like I told you, I was at a wedding and the Bharat came, and there was this one child who just kept crying because she wanted the phone. She was just very clear. She was not interested in the Bharat. She was not interested in dancing. She just wanted the phone, and the mother could not pacify her in any way. We need to understand 2 parts to this. One is, yes, it is an addiction, but as a parent, you cannot use it at convenience. In Gujarati, we have like everything is very sagvadiyu. That
Correct.
term? Like if I want to follow it, great. If I don't want to follow it, great. Right? It doesn't work like that. So आज आप फ्लाइट में हैं तो ठीक है 2 घंटा देख लो. नहीं, कल से 15 मिनट only. 15 minutes is your screen time.
Yeah.
But
Doesn't
2
work.
hours, I want to faff around, or I'm on a call, or I do not want to entertain you. So it will be 2 hours of screen time. Rules cannot be flexible. Rules are rules. Right? Now, that is one part of it. The second is, in my house and with my kids, I've never had a concept of screen time. Because what does screen time mean? So it means that it is when I say there's no concept of screen time, it's not limited. It's not defined. Now, what does that mean? Because the minute it's limited, it's restricted, means
You
it's
want
desirable.
moderate.
Right? I give an example of a broccoli and an ice cream, right? We just play down on the broccoli like, it's so nutritious, it's so bad, it's so like whatever. You have to have it. So that's why there's already an irk to us. But ice cream is so good, it's so yummy, it's so delicious. You automatically want it more. It's always got a reward badge to it. Screen time, unfortunately, what I see most moms doing is have a reward around screen time. You did so well in your exam, you get 15 minutes of screen time. You just made it more desirable. Now, I mean, when I'm dealing with people who have specific issues around screen time, it's a whole separate conversation. But for parents on a generic level, don't make it desirable. Don't make it don't tag it as reward for sure. It just doesn't work. And number 3 is, like I said, I'm all pro screen, but to use it for what? Right? Use it because FaceTime. You want to meet your grandparents. You want to create more memories out of the picture. Like I know when I was a full-time working mom and my daughter was only like 18 months or so, and I had to travel to the UK for like US for like 10 days. I would, and she wouldn't eat without me telling her a story. I recorded 10 different stories on the iPad back in the day, and every day Dadi would play one story, but Dadi was sitting next to her, right? And she saw that, okay, mom's dead. I could have played YouTube videos.
Yeah.
But it took me effort to read a story, because I know after every story how she would react. And she's waiting for me, and I would purposely skip a line. Because you know how intuitive children are. If you miss a word also, they know, Mama, you forgot this word. They would say that. So she knew. And I would be like, Akshu, I know I missed this word, right? That's what they're craving. They're craving connection. And the minute you give that to them, it's great. That is maybe when they're much younger. Even today, like I watch a movie a week with my kids. Screen time is never alone. Because the minute it's like good old days, right? We used to all watch together, and you know, if you're a 90s kid, you were watching like Banegi Apni Baat and you were watching Dekh Bhai Dekh and all that. It was family viewing,
Family time, yeah.
right? It was bringing parents together.
Yeah.
It was bringing grandparents together, right? Sometimes I know my daughter's watching like 15 minutes of Saregama with Dadi, and she's watching 15 minutes of Indian Idol, and then she's watching 15 minutes of KBC, and then she's maybe watching like 15 minutes of like some Wicked Witch or something. I don't know what she's watching. But whatever that she's watching, right? She's watching that. But it's time viewed. And sometimes, like, I saw the whole season of Never Have I Ever with my daughter because I didn't know if it was appropriate content,
Yeah.
right? Because 13 in the US on Netflix is very different from a 13 in India.
In India is.
So
Yeah.
I just saw, and of course, I got hooked on to watching it after. That's a separate story. And I had a crush on that, well, I forget that guy's name, Pat.
Pat.
I thought he was cute as well. But you know what? We watched it. We discussed, well, like, you think Devi did right. You think Devi did wrong.
Yeah.
There was conversation. The minute that happens, screen time becomes redundant. The concept of screen time will become redundant.
Right.
So we watched the Eras tour together now, right? And we got so carried away. We went for the show also. Oh my God. But the fact is that was a memory that we built together. So screen time is not bad. How you use it is extremely, extremely important. I'm all pro technology. Like, my daughter has her own social media page for her. She runs a separate podcast, and she has a page for that. But she's so well versed. I mean, she's 15 and she's so well versed with using Instagram effectively and safely, more important, that it's changed our dynamics completely. Social today is not part of her anxiety repertoire because she knows how to navigate through it. Right? You're having that conversation with her. I know who's, you know, because it's part of a family center, and we know who's following her. If there is any comment which is nasty, how can she block? How can she delete? Like, who, you know, what are the kind of pictures? What's the kind of digital footprint that you're leaving behind? Having those conversations makes a huge difference. But yes, screen time is a challenge. To all the parents who are listening, I hear you. Let's talk about what we can do about it.
Interesting.
And I think the best remedy for it is time.
What do you mean time?
Give time unconditionally. You cannot be like, and I wish for people on YouTube will be able to say, hey, yeah, I'm listening to you. Tell me. Yeah, okay. There's no eye contact.
Yeah.
And then it's like, Mom, and yeah, tell me, can you not see I'm on the phone? Stop the damn phone. Like I gave you the example of walking into the door.
Yeah.
Right? You're just not present in that moment. And then you're saying, when your child turns 13, my daughter's just slammed the phone. She doesn't want to look beyond her screen. Yeah. Why should she? I mean,
who's there to listen to her or talk to her?
Exactly. So my point is, your child's watching you more than he's listening. Right?
True.
And also, I am someone who's been in front of the camera and behind the phone for so long that my kids have understood, and I do it very clinically. This is work. This is my time. And I am not the same person. Like, it's not a split personality or a differentiate, but work is one part of me. It's not the whole me. And I think when you start separating those two, it becomes very, very clear to your children. And then you cannot get away. But mama's working on the phone. Okay, mama's doing work. This is mama's office. Oh my God, the lamest excuse I hear women giving is, mama needs to do this. No. Then you say mama's office also shuts down. But then mama's office never shuts down.
Yeah.
Or dad's office never shuts down on the phone or the computer. There has to be downtime.
Yeah. So, as a mom who's working part-time, because I don't go into office every day. I work from home few days, I go into office a few days. But that mom guilt is always there when I'm not around. Even if I'm at home and I'm like, usually I don't, like, I only end up working when he's asleep or like it's at school or doing something else. When I'm at home and he's home, both of us are together. But when I'm not at home, the mom guilt really kicks in. And I don't know, I've just not been able to sort of grapple with those feelings. Like, every time I'm not around, I feel like, oh my God, like, I'm missing out on something. How do you navigate through those feelings?
Do you feel the same when you go out for dinner, lunches?
I do. I
You do.
mean, I do.
Okay, so I'm one of those moms
Not just
who
work, it's just when I'm
yeah,
not around.
yeah.
That's the
So you
feeling.
need to first recognize as a mom or a dad, or a primary caretaker, as I would say, is that you're feeling guilty because you believe you are the epicenter of your child's life, right? I don't believe that. The minute you move the focus away from you and you move the focus back onto your child, you will start feeling less important. You're giving yourself way too much importance. He's going to thrive without you as well. Your job was to give birth. Your job is to raise, but raise without you, because you're not going to be at every point, every junction, every single moment in his life. He's got to battle it out. Bumped into this table, no problem. Stand up. They were meant to fall, because the more they fall, the more they jump, the more they play, the stronger they get. Because he needs to know this is a sharp object, right? So, my point is, you are making, and a large part of parents who go through this have put the emphasis so much on themselves and not on the child, because you believe that nobody can do a good job as much as you. But that's wrong, because you feel that there is no better human than you who can teach him anything else. I think my kids have learned more from Dadi and Nani and from my house help and my cook and my driver and my husband and Masis and people in the building and the entire village. The village is important. It wasn't said that the mother needs a child needs a village, or whatever that saying is. That where is the village? The village is not only supposed to support the mother, the village is supposed to support the child. You are just one villager in that village. And suddenly you realize that there are so many other people who can teach. Like, example, my mom teaches my daughter satsang. I cannot teach that. वो मेरी skill set ही नहीं है, like Namita Thapar would say, right? But that's it, because I need to understand, and I know the conversations that they have, I will never be able to have those conversations with her, right? So why am I giving myself so much more? So do not. And you need to understand, doing something you love doing does not make you not a good human being. Like, I love my job. I love exercising. I'm absolutely crazy about it. And so much so that, even when I'm packing my dabbas, I'll pack my dabba before my children. Why should I feel guilty? Because, we keep repeatedly hearing, put on your oxygen mask and all that. I know I have a migraine problem. I used to have. And now I'm so extra careful about it that I know that if I collapse, because I know if I get like a headache, which I don't if I don't eat every 2 hours, I will collapse. I'll be puking. I'll be in bed all day. The whole system will collapse. Right? And I don't give myself too much importance on that. But what I'm trying to say is that I don't like to be out of play. That's the person I am. And for whatever reason, it could be for my child, it could be for my fitness routine, it could be about reading, it could be watching my favorite show, whatever it may be. But I don't want to be out of action. So I want to take care of myself. And I don't think I need to feel guilty about it. And I don't think anybody else. I think a large part of moms or dads don't feel guilty as much as the world makes them feel guilty. And to all of them, I tell everybody what my dad told me is, my dad was a big believer that women should always be financially independent. He said, I will give you, in Gujarat, in like Indian system, he said Dahej, right? Like, that dowry or Dahej that I will give you will compound and will never, will only grow at a rate that you will never be able to let anything else grow, which is education and your ability to be financially independent.
Yeah.
So to that point, if I need to be financially independent, and which is what I keep saying, because we as women are going to live a longer life, why are we feeling guilty? Why don't the men feel guilty?
Yeah.
Why are they so clinical about it? Like, I am extremely clinical about it. This is time I need to work because I need to fund their education, because I need to take care of this, because we want to travel together, because you know what, we want to go for this show, this tour, whatever we may want to do. I am working towards that. The minute you make it about us and not about me, it changes the dynamics.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your book.
Yes. The parents I met was actually conceived, I think, ever since I started Kids Stop Press, which is about 10 years ago. And the whole premise was who you are is somewhere sewn into your childhood. And we've done an anthology of 22 different interviews, taking people from all different walks, professions, for the simple reason to know that what did it take. We've always heard it from these outliers, like what it took to for them to be successful, but really, what was their personality type? What toys did they play with? Every little detail, their temperament, their likes, dislikes, food, just sibling equation, every little detail to know that how did they land up to where they are, right? And a lot of these questions are something that I had in my mind, and I said, let me meet these 22 outliers who are very very carefully selected, and say, let's figure out, right? So whether it's a Suhani Shah story where I say, okay, will I have the courage to pull out my child of grade 2 in school and say, okay, do a specialized thing, do train only to be a magician or a mentalist, or whether it is Captain Shivani Kalra who flew for Mission Ganga, and she comes from a typical Punjabi family, and parents, to become a pilot is really, really expensive. And her mom said, I broke my pension fund and I paid for Shivani's captaincy, when everybody says, why are you investing in a daughter? Like she says in Punjabi, and she says, "Kudi naal itna paisa kharch kar rahe ho, ek din ब्याह दे चली जाएगी." That is traditional Indian mindset, but they fought against the storm and said, no, what, this is what Shivani wants to do, and we will support her. Or whether it's Harsh Jain of Dream 11, I thought that, large part of the conversations that we have today are children. Children today don't have value. They're growing up with too much. They have too much of abundance. I was like, do children who grow up in abundance have as much grit? And Harsh is a classic example of that. Like he combined passion and profession so brilliantly, and he could have not done it. He could have not worked, but he still did it. I mean, to me, that's absolute grit. And yes, children in abundance can have grit. Or if it was about Priyanka Chopra's mom, who said, trust your kids and give them a voice in every small decision. And just sometimes when they're going through their teens, just be their punching bag. I probably needed to hear that when my daughter was going through, when I was actually writing the book. I needed to change that equation and that dynamic with my child to know that she's going through a lot. I really need to be that punching bag. And I did. And I worked on myself because I believe that, everything cannot be about them. We've as parents got to upgrade ourselves as well, right? To
Absolutely.
have a more fruitful and an enjoyable relationship that we want to build. And I know that so many parents of teens who are struggling today. If I take any of these, it just went on to prove the fact that the freedom, the voice, the courage, the unconditional love that you give your children in childhood, it will manifest in their future, and manifest brilliantly, right? And like my mom once told me, she's like, the more time you give to your kids when they're younger, the less time you will have to spend with them when they're older on more difficult and complex things. So it just has stuck with me, and it kind of and yes, as parents, we need to draw tough boundaries as well, and we need to say our no's. But you're not, like again, my mom would say that if you've not been hated by your kids, you haven't been a good parent. So your kids will hate you, but that's okay. They're not you're not supposed to be on the same page for everything,
Absolutely.
and that's fine. But the whole purpose of the book was to get these stories out to parents and to children, and both. And I'm so happy that so many kids are picking up the book, because they're finding it extremely difficult to navigate conversations of, I want to be a gamer, I want to be a creator, I want to be a YouTuber, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to be a woman who wants to be a sports star or women's cricket. And we're seeing that kids are picking up these books because they want to know what it took for their heroes to get where they are, because their heroes are not what your and my heroes
Yeah.
were, right? And they're okay with picking it up and saying, okay, let me see what they did so I can learn and I can navigate that distance with my parent. And the parents obviously love it because they don't know how to, like, I don't know how many parents will be okay today if their kids say, I want to be a gamer. But today, after reading reading Ujjwal Chaurasia's chapter, or reading Techno Gamers chapter, they are okay
to
with
let their
it,
yeah.
because they see that sometimes what you've learned and what you really are passionate about will find you. We're both products of that, right?
Yeah,
I'm sure you
absolutely.
haven't studied to host a podcast, and neither have
Absolutely
I.
not. I
And
mean, I
not be on
had
Instagram, neither have I. Not run about
my
finance
dad was
channel.
one of these parents that you're talking about who was like, "What are you doing? You have a great paying job in the corporate world. You are doing well. You're due for a promotion. What is wrong with you? What are you doing?" And it took a while for Siley and me both.
Hmm.
It was like a combined effort. My husband, Siley, and me, all three of us trying to convince my dad that okay, maybe I need to do this, for myself. And obviously now he's like the biggest supporter, but
Yeah.
it takes, I don't know, it takes some time for
Yeah.
us to reach out to them, get through to them, for them to try and understand, because it's a very different world that we're in now.
Exactly. And that was precisely the reason I wrote the book, because I wanted to be that bridge in letting the parents know that the kids are not wrong and let the kids know of how they can communicate to the parents.
So, Mansi, you have multiple sources of income, you do a lot of different things. I want to ask you how you manage your money.
It's so interesting that you say that, because just recently I had shared it both on my LinkedIn and on my Instagram that I find it so strange that in the last 10 years of running Kid Stop Press, we've worked with maybe just 2 or 3 financial services client, because every time I'd go to them, they're like, "Oh, we don't want to speak to you." And I'll be like, "Why?" And they'll be like, "You have the reach, your content is great, quality is great, but we're not looking at the target audience that you have, because we have like 85% women." And I was like, "Why?" And they're like, "Nahi, bhaiya, 99% mardi insurance khareedte hain." And I was just thinking in my head that why are women never spoken to about financial products, when it's actually proved that women, if they like a product or service, outdo men in terms of loyalty and recommendation. um, and also for the fact that women have a longer lifespan than men, and women have better plans, facilities, interest rates, insurance rates than men. And you'll be surprised that 85% of the women out of the 350 who responded said that my spouse actually takes care of my money. Spouse stroke father, we had given that as an
Yeah.
option. And I don't, to answer your question, I am not one of those 85, and I'm so glad about it. Yes, we discuss, because obviously it's a joint pooled portfolio. So we're like, okay, if I'm going to take the risk, what are you going to put? So a lot of it is, of course, dependent on our age. And we're also sandwich generations in sandwich generation in many ways, right? So we're the ones who need more care, because we're also taking care of aging parents and kids
Young
going to
children.
university, right? And young children. So, in a way, the purse strings are always so strained, because you're always prioritizing something or the other,
That's true.
right? Um, so to answer your question, how do I manage it? Again, I think power of compounding, using whole bunch of budgeting apps and tools. Like, I'm a huge um, sucker for this app called YNAB. I don't know. I don't know if anybody uses it, or a simple thing. If YNAB's too complicated for women, just download this app called Money Manager, because right now we're making so
Money.
many digital payments that you don't even realize that, oh my god, I just spent 200 rupees on Google Pay, 2000 rupees here, 20,000, because money is not going out and it's going infinitely from your bank account. You don't realize how
How
much
much
you
you're
pay,
spending.
right? And how much you're spending. And when you are tracking that data on how much I'm spending on what, then you actually, and I have this philosophy of deciding how I want to spend and on what I want to spend. So investing is great, but understanding your spends to me is far more important. So if you at the beginning of the year write down what are your top 3 goals for the year. For me this year is all about travel, right? Then then every time I want to spend, I'm saying, is it going towards my goals? Yes, it is. Okay, I'll make the plunge. But if travel was not my top 3 goal for the year, and it was about book promotions, it was about fitness, and it's about more time with family, right? Then where am I spending? If I'm buying that dress, is it contributing to the top 3 goals? Nah,
Maybe
it's
not.
not. right? But if it is about promoting my book, am I reading more books? Am I looking at more subscriptions? Am I subscribing to something which is going to help me gain knowledge so I can promote my book
The right
more?
kind of books.
You know, the right kind of stuff. If it is, so my point, if it is about fitness, if I'm taking a gym membership, yes, it's contributing back to my top 3 goals, right? So understand where you're spending. Have this mantra of income minus savings is equal to expense. Like, just write it big, bold on your wall, because that will just be your North Star in terms of saving more.
Yeah.
Understanding budgeting to the T. And I teach my kids also about budgeting, because it's absolutely essential, because if you know where your money is being spent, you will be able to make wiser. Like, if you don't look at data, then you will not be able to make wiser choices. And because I know that I'm working, I'm time strapped, I will still hire somebody to do the transactional part of it, or the operational part of it, but I am making those conscious calls, whether I've hired a wealth manager, whether it is about SIPs or whatever that I may want to do, or I know that at 10% of my portfolio is something I want to look at investing in gold, or if it is about, okay, saying buy a property 5 years down the line, if I feel like I want to. But that's all planned and that's all budgeted. Right? And is it aligning? Do I want to even stay in the city after 5 years? Maybe not. So do I need that house? Cut it. Right?
Correct.
So it's all about where you want to be. And so I'm saying investing, planning, budgeting, and knowing what's your risk appetite at this point in time is extremely, extremely important to investing.
Yeah.
And also domain knowledge expertise, right? Like, I know I'm not someone who has the ability to track the market every single day.
Yeah.
No problem.
Stocks
happy.
you can't do every day. Then you can't.
Exactly.
A large part of your portfolio can't be in stocks.
Yeah. So, okay. So I'm happier with mutual funds, right? I'm
Sure.
happier doing that. Or I've hired somebody to do that. But I am the core decision maker to that, right? Or deciding on my children's education fund. Yes, I want to take that risk. Yes, what is the aid available? I do spend time in tracking scholarships of different colleges, or what are the top colleges that she may want to look at. So it completely depends on how you want to make those choices. So I would say, let's break it down into income, budgeting, savings, and then aligning your expenses with your goals, and then finding tools relevant for it.
Absolutely. This is literally exactly what Siley and me talk about. That this is the order in which you need to sort of plan for your investments, because investments are the last thing you need to worry
Yeah.
about if you've got all this sorted.
Yeah.
Then where you invest is a very natural course of action that you will take. If you know what your goals are, if you know that, okay, my short-term goal is to take this trip to France at the end of the year, then I know that, this short-term goal ke liye money, whatever I have, it's going to go into a liquid fund.
Yeah.
If I know that, I have a long-term goal to sort of, plan for buying a car 5 years down the line or 3 years down the line or whatever, then I'm going to put it in an investment vehicle appropriately.
Yeah.
So I think where you invest is a very natural sort of progression if you have got all the other stuff sorted.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Great, good. So Mansi, I'm really glad you could make it here.
Thank
And I
you.
think it was a wonderful chat that we had. And thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Hey guys, if you love the content, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, because it really, really will mean a lot to all of us on the show. So go ahead, do it now.